Today, I'm going to focus on debunking redeemed Zoomer. Kyle has done this before me. He made his own video debunking redeemed Zoomer, and I will have a link in the description where you could go to Kyle's channel and watch his video after you watch my video. And I will focus mostly just on the historical aspects of redeemed Zoomer's critique of Orthodoxy. And it's clearly obvious for anyone who studies history that Redeemed Zoomer is not really good with history. And that's what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to focus on the historical aspect. I recommend you watch Kyle's channel, and I believe it's called Redeemed Zoomer versus Orthodoxy. And yeah, but it doesn't matter. I'll have a link in the description below so you guys check it out after watching this video.
Western Catholic Church basically invented Western civilization. Basically, everything we appreciate about Western civilization, like modern hospitals, universities, just even the Western family structure, so much that we just think of as a normal part of our society, came from the West.
Okay, no. Okay, listen here, Zoomer. A lot of these things that you've listed came from Byzantium. In the medieval era, in the Middle Ages, Byzantium was always the center of civilization, and the Western barbarians were always jealous of Byzantium. Yes, it's true that throughout time Muslims would come in and conquer more land from the Byzantine Empire, which was always called the Roman Empire, sometimes the Eastern Roman Empire. But the Byzantine Empire, that's a title that was attributed much later, post fall. But it was in Byzantium, it was in the Byzantine Empire, in Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. That was the center of the civilized world from like 500 AD up until 1457, or I think it's 1452. I'm getting my dates confused here. But up until the fall of Constantinople, the Byzantine Empire was the center of civilization. Your universities, your hospitals, like all this civilization came from there. And when the Muslims took over Constantinople, a lot of the scholars, the Greek scholars, the philosophers, the well-educated people, they all escaped from Byzantium and they went into the West and they brought over lots of books, lots of philosophies, lots of ideas into the West. And why do you think all of a sudden there was this major like renaissance in Western Europe? Gee, I wonder, like, uh, how come like you went from like these dark ages in the western part of Europe, and then all of a sudden you have this huge enlightened movement, right? Well, what's interesting is that like is this these refugees from the fallen Roman Empire escaping the Muslims have entered into Western Europe for refuge, and they brought knowledge with them. And of course, throughout history, the Western people have distorted a lot of this knowledge, but still, it was it all came from the East. It came from Byzantium. All your hospitals, your universities came from there. But unfortunately, redeemed Zoomer does not understand this. Throughout the Middle Ages, Western Europeans were always jealous of Constantinople, always envious. Also, around like before the 1000 era, before like somewhere in the age range between 500 and 900 AD. Why do you think there were always Slavic raids on Constantinople? Why do you think there were always Viking raids, Scandinavian raids, because Constantinople was rich. It had gold, it had treasures, right? It had civilization. You always had barbarians wanting to get the capital of civilization. They're always trying to capture it every single time. And Scandinavians and Slavs would always raid other European countries. That's true, but the top prize was always Constantinople. They would always fail. Constantinople would always repel these barbarians, the Scandinavians and the Slavs, but Constantinople was always the top prize. When the Slavic pagans, whenever they tried to take over Constantinople, Constantinople simply just paid them off. Here you go. Here's some gold. Now, bye bye. Now, get out of here, right? And that's how it usually would end up, right? They'll either like kick them out or they'll just pay them off. Hey, just leave, right? And so the that's like the that's like the history of Constantinople civilization right there. It was the envy of Europe, right? The Western Europeans were always kind of like in the political sense, were basically jealous of Constantinople. Unfortunately, Redeemed Zoomer will not get this type of education in a public school. He will not get this on a college level in the United States. He would have to just go out on his own and do his own research, order his own books on the internet. And most likely, a lot of these books are not written in the English language, unfortunately.
Or Protestantism. I'd say Protestantism did this even to an even greater extent. Um, had a really profound effect on the countries economically, socially, and culturally, and caused them all to advance. You could really take any country in Europe. I know Europe's mostly atheist now, but every country in Europe, for the most part, is historically Protestant, Catholic, or Orthodox. So the countries in Europe that are doing the best economically, like Sweden, Denmark, the Netherlands, those are the ones that were historically Protestant. Protestantism helped even more than Catholicism. This whole like Protestant work ethic really emphasized, individual hard work and
Okay, Zoomer, this is not really an argument for anything. So, historically, every country will have economic downfall, economic rise. It doesn't matter because it's just a normal human process that every single country goes through. Um, for example, uh, right now, like he's pointing out how you have these mostly Protestant countries that are doing well economically. They're not doing so well today, are they? By 2024, Russia's economy will surpass Germany's economy by 2024. This is literally next year. And Germany, historically Protestant country, well, uh-oh, looks like they're not doing so well at the moment. If you look at France, historically Catholic country, they're not doing so well. They have a migrant crisis that they're dealing with. England, Great Britain, they're not doing so well either. And look at China. China, a historically non-Christian country, historically Buddhist country, even under their own communism, and right now China still being somewhat culturally Buddhist, they're going to surpass probably our economy by 2024, or they might be equal to our economy by 2024. So this whole like religious thing that really makes no sense. Historically, it's not a good argument. It doesn't matter like what religion dominates the culture of a people. Like he's not paying attention to geopolitics at the moment because historically it just doesn't matter what religion your country is, right? Because your country will, regardless of your religion, you might have a boost in your economy. You can have a downfall in your economy. It just happens. Okay, it's a human process. And of course, if we get super deep and conspiratorial, we could get into that in another video. But yeah, but this argument right now that Zoomer is offering has no basis. It has like no he has no legs to stand on because China has proven that they were never a Christian country ever. Yes, they have Christian converts, but they're a huge minority. And historically Buddhist country is now going to be the global dominant economy by 2024. So religion literally doesn't necessarily play any role here. Also, look at Mexican migrants. They have a hard work ethic. They have a strong work ethic. If you look at a lot of these Mexicans from Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, California, and I used to live in the Southwest for 14 years. And despite the fact that I'm against illegal migration, at the same time, I cannot deny the fact that a lot of these illegal migrants work a lot. They have strong work ethic and they're highly religious. They are super Catholic. But you look at their country, they're not doing so well, are they? Despite the fact that they were super Catholic right next door to the United States. Why aren't they doing so well despite the fact that they're supposed to have a strong work ethic? So this is not really an argument from for this is not a good argument for Zoomer to have. Historically, it has no basis.
They were so stuck in tradition, positive and negative effects on those countries. So I would say because they were so stuck in tradition, they never really made big societal developments, and that's why Eastern European countries are not quite as economically advanced as Western European countries.
Okay, this guy totally does not know history. I would like to remind Zoomer of a place that used to be called the Russian Empire, and he's saying like, oh, they had no societal advancements, nothing for their society. This is totally not true. Um, Russian Orthodox tradition did not stop the Russian Tsar from making serfdom illegal. So serfdom was gone. The Russian Empire got rid of serfdom before the United States would abolish slavery. The modern day world that we live in, like all this technology that we're using, you could thank Dr. Mendeleev for this. Now, I really hope Redeem Zoomer knows who this is. Dr. Mendeleev was a Russian scientist who was also an Orthodox Christian. And Orthodox traditionalism did not stop him from discovering the periodic table. Like the modern day periodic table that we use today, majority of it, majority of it was found by him. And guess what? Do you know how he found it? You know how he discovered the periodic table? He saw it in a dream. Literally, he said that God revealed the periodic table to him in a dream. So I don't understand Zoomer's argument for saying that like there was like no advancements at all from Orthodox countries. Also, I would like to mention another scientist, Michael Lomonosov. Michael Lomonosov, what did he discover? Oh, he was the first scientist to discover atmosphere on Venus. And this was in the 1700s. Think about this 1700s. Michael Lomonosov was looking through some primitive telescope, advanced for the time, but very primitive in our time. But he's looking through a primitive telescope and he realizes that, oh, there's atmosphere on Venus. And today we're able to confirm this. Tsiolkovsky, he even calculated that yes, it's possible to travel into outer space. Eventually, the Soviets would then take his ideas and work on them and develop them. But Orthodox Christianity did not stop Russia in the science department. Russia was doing economically great before the First World War. Russia, I believe, was like the largest exporter of grain to the whole world before 1914. This was between 1912 and 1913. The Russian farmers were putting Western capitalists out of business when it came to grain and agriculture. And then French researchers have predicted, this is before the First World War, French researchers have predicted that Russia by the 1950s will become the world's top superpower by the 1950s. But you had the First World War happen, unfortunately, and you had the revolution. Russia was set back. But this had nothing to do with Orthodoxy. Orthodoxy was not hindering Russia from becoming a prosperous nation. So um, Zoomer's argument falls apart. Also, Russia had a major contribution in the arts. Like, have you not heard of Tchaikovsky and his contribution to classical music, Rachmaninoff, and so forth, right? Like you have so many classical music composers that came from Russia. Prokofiev, right? He he started off in the Russian Empire as well. Um, so uh, I don't understand where Zoomer is coming with this. Well, actually, I do understand. He's just ignorant of Russian history. That's why he's spewing all this nonsense that Orthodoxy somehow hindering traditionally Orthodox countries from developing. No, there's a thing called communism that was at first triggered by revolutionaries. These revolutionaries were paid by Western elites, and a lot of these Western elites came from Protestant countries, right? And they would finance revolutionaries in Eastern Europe to eventually bring on communism and to hold these countries back. But here's the thing, though. Despite all this, if you look at Russia right now, it's slowly coming back. It's got a long way to go, but it's slowly, very slowly recovering. So it was not really Orthodoxy that held back Russia, but even without Orthodoxy, right? What's interesting is that even without Orthodoxy, Russia, the Soviet Union, during the Cold War, they're the first ones in space, first spacewalk, first to orbit the moon, first to like fly around the moon and everything, take pictures of it, right? So all of this basically was because of Soviet scientists who learned from teachers from the Tsarist era, from the Orthodox era. So uh, Zoomer's argument has no basis. Orthodoxy did not hinder Russia's development or prosperity. In fact, it was the absence of orthodoxy that hindered Russia from progressing forward.
Protestantism for like Northern Europe was basically too good for its own good. It helped society too much. It helped society so much that society got really wealthy and prosperous, and as a result, the people got kind of spoiled and irreligious.
Well, what's interesting, the same thing happened in Russia. Russia was becoming prosperous, doing so good. This was all happening before 1914. Russia was progressing, advancing, and the people got spoiled. And when I say people, I'm talking about the elites, the nobility, the capitalists in Russia. They all got spoiled. They also became irreligious, and they took everything that they had for granted, and they thought they could do better. And the revolutionaries, their major issue with Tsardom is that the Tsar would always basically do what they want to do, right? The Tsar would always create reforms for the people. And the revolutionaries were angry that the Tsar was taking credit, because they wanted the credit. The revolutionaries, the socialists, the communists, they wanted the credit. They wanted the people to, trust them and to believe in them, and they took it all for granted. And so everything was going fine for Russia until the revolutionaries, backed by Western elitists from Protestant countries, from historically Protestant countries, sponsored the communist revolution in Russia. And also, what's interesting is that he mentioned, Zoomer mentions that people in countries that were doing fine became spoiled and irreligious. This, the same thing literally happened in Russia like almost 100 years ago. And we could see the same thing going on today. So we have countries in the West that are still prosperous. They're doing pretty well for themselves. And they're becoming spoiled. And guess what? It led them to being irreligious. You look at our Western society now, look at the rainbow flags everywhere, right? That's also a result of prosperity right here, right? That's also a result of of a good economy, right? It led to all of this degeneracy that we're facing today. So um, yes, prosperity does not always mean a good thing. It could create a society of weak men. You probably saw the meme. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Well, good times have created weak men in Russia because they thought they could do better. They thought they could do better than the Tsar. They thought they could do better without orthodoxy. They thought that the absence of orthodoxy will make them do better. Guess what? They did not do better. They made things worse. And right now, Russia is slowly, very slowly returning to orthodoxy at a snail's pace, but they're slowly returning and they're slowly, at a snail's pace, recovering. You look at the West, and it doesn't matter if the West is Protestant, Orthodox, Roman Catholic. Look at the West. They're becoming irreligious. They're losing their spirituality. They're losing their religions. So um, at this moment today in 2023, it really doesn't matter who's historically what, because um, the fact that the English lost their true Anglican identity, the fact that France lost its true Roman Catholic identity. Look at what they have now. Look at the degeneracy that they have now. While at the same time, Russia also has a good amount of degeneracy as well. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, on a government level, you already have legislation trying to somewhat promote religious values. And so, what if Russia's economy is still not the best in the world? Well, what's more important for you as a person, for your nation? Economic prosperity or spiritual growth with God? Like historically, it was always the absence of orthodoxy that would lead to an Orthodox or historically Orthodox country's downfall. Another example, if we go back in time, back to Constantinople, the center of civilization for the time, it was a center of civilization for the medieval era before the Muslims took it over. Well, why did Constantinople fall? Because the last emperor became a uniate. A uniate is someone who unites with Rome. And the last Roman emperor decided, you know what, I'm going to become a uniate. I'm going to submit myself to the Pope. So he submitted the Orthodox Church to the Pope. Well, the Orthodox Church in his region was submitted to the Pope. He himself became a uniate. He was under the Pope's power. And guess what? The Muslims show up and take over Constantinople. Constantinople falls, and that's the end of the Roman Empire. It's the absence of orthodoxy that leads historically Orthodox countries into decay, not the presence of orthodoxy. Orthodox traditionalism never hindered Orthodox countries from prospering and from doing well on a scientific level, cultural level, educational level. I really wish Redeemed Zoomer would study more history before spewing some BS out of his mouth.
Church is that it can be very nationalistic, and the Orthodox Church is always very divided.
Okay, no, the Orthodox Church is not divided. This is a really dumb argument. It's a very elementary school argument, and usually a lot of Roman Catholics make this stupid argument. But what he's trying to say is that Greek Orthodoxies for the Greeks, Russian Orthodoxies for the Russians, Serbian Orthodoxies for the Serbians. None of that is true. Like, you don't have to be Russian to go to a Russian Orthodox church. You don't have to be Greek to go to a Greek Orthodox church. You go to any Russian Orthodox church in America, and most likely, at least half the people are not Russian. You'd be surprised who you would see in a Russian Orthodox church here in America. I've been to multiple Russian Orthodox churches here in the United States, and I've been to some where majority of the people were not even Russian, had nothing to do with Russia. And same thing with Greek churches. I've been to a few other Greek churches, similar things. Yes, in Greek churches, Greeks usually dominate, but still, you don't have to be Greek. I'm not ethnically Serbian. I'm not ethnically Serbian, but I was baptized in the Serbian Orthodox Church. Now, all these labels, Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Serbian Orthodox, Bulgarian Orthodox, Orthodox Church in America, Romanian Orthodox Church, all these are just names of canonical jurisdictions. If I were to tell Redeemed Zoomer that I was a Roman Catholic, would he assume that I was Italian? Or would any of you assume that I was Italian? If I told you I'm a Roman Catholic, would any of you assume that I am Italian because of that? No. If I claim to be Roman Catholic, I could be Hispanic. I could be Italian. I could be German. I could be Anglo, right? So, like, historically, it's the same thing, right? You don't have to be Italian to be a Roman Catholic. And same thing applies here to these canonical jurisdictions. These are simply canonical jurisdictions. Like, we're not divided by nationality, right? Where the Serbian Orthodox is a different church, the Russian Orthodox is different, the Greek Orthodox, they're different. No, it's one big Orthodox church. Just historically, we've had canonical jurisdictions for geographical reasons and so forth, and other theological reasons, of course, maybe, but still, we're one big Orthodox church, right? I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe there's like 15 or 16 autocephalous Orthodox churches. I could be wrong on that number, and I believe there's also some autonomous churches underneath those autocephalous churches. And so, therefore, it doesn't matter which jurisdiction you go to, Greek, Russian, or Serbian. You do not have to be ethnically a part of those jurisdictions, right? You don't have to be Serbian to go to a Serbian Orthodox church. And that's where I got baptized, despite being ethnically Russian. People would wonder, well, if you're Russian, why didn't you go to a Russian Orthodox church? Because I don't have to. Like, I could go to any Orthodox church and I could take communion in any Orthodox church. It's fine. A friend of mine, like, he's Greek Orthodox. He used to do readings at a Russian Orthodox church. All that is fine. We're one big Orthodox church. We're not divided by national jurisdictions. That does not restrict us from communing together. So this is not a valid argument. And I would argue why nationalism is not really a bad thing, but this has nothing to do with this, though. That will be for a separate video someday. But with this argument right here, that all these jurisdictions are somehow different churches and they all disagree with each other. The only difference between a lot of these canonical churches is that you might have some cultural difference of some sort, but theologically, we're the same church. Nothing really changes. There is no major difference. We're one big Orthodox church. And so, Orthodox traditionalism never held back any country from becoming strong, from becoming prosperous. It was always the absence of orthodoxy that would always lead to a downfall of an orthodox nation. Historically, it's been proven you have 1,000 years of the Roman Empire in the East, and then you have basically 1,000 years of Russian monarchy, and then you have 300 years of the Russian Empire, continuing the tradition of Byzantium for 300 years. And through troubles and through whatever problems they had and imperfections that they had as humans, at the same time, Orthodoxy did not get in the way. Orthodox traditionalism did not hold back Russia. They did not hold back Eastern Europe. It was the absence of orthodoxy that will lead to downfall and decay and destruction of historically orthodox nations. So that's basically what I have to say about this. Just a little tiny history lesson about Byzantium and the Russian Empire. And if more young people in the West would actually read Russian books, read actual good historical books on Russia and Byzantium, their worldview could change, especially regarding geopolitics and just world history. And so I would totally recommend that Redeemed Zoomer would pick up a history book and just do some more research instead of just spewing nonsense. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Support me on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/altmonarchist. God bless.